day today, so let me go ahead and get started. If anybody else jumps in, they can jump in. Let us pray. Blessed and loving Lord, I give thanks for this group that's here today. It so encourages, empowers me, and just makes me enthusiastic about all that's going on. And I thank you for each and every one of them, each and every one of their churches. Now, I ask you to tell us exactly what it is we need to do be your ministers in ways that you would like us to be. May what I show generate the right thoughts, whether or not I ever say them. Let the Holy Spirit fill in the blanks that I leave. Amen.
Amen.
All right, let me share screen and see if I remember. Oh, I did it right. That is amazing. Got a little short video to show you later or partway through, and I think I've got it so it'll actually work. If everybody mute yourselves, just cut out some of the background noise. And for today, we're going to do the very quick overview, but we're going to start by just reminding ourselves that our goal is not to grow attendance or budget, much though we want that to happen, but to help people grow closer to God. And today we're going to focus on, because it ties in so directly, on why it's difficult to reach people, but don't want to leave us in a negative. Talk about what the great potential is. Remind ourselves very quickly about the overall program so we can focus on today, which is the relationship, what I call stage 3, and talk about why to build a relationship. And, you know, that seems so obvious, but if we don't think about it, we may not get all we could get done. And then how to build a relationship. And then just a couple minutes on really what is evangelism, what happens after we have a relationship. So our overall process to reach out to new people, you need to remember you won't do everything I point out. And I was glad to hear some of the things going on, because it just seems to show, like what Sam was talking about, that it's possible to do a few things and do them well. Because I don't want people to overwhelm themselves. I do want you to remember you're never alone. I love to get together with people and talk about what's going on and throw out ideas. And I'm really happy if I throw out an idea and you say, you know, that just wouldn't work around here, because that means you're thinking it through. And that's what I want. And, you know, the only time I'm going to get a little bit upset is if you stop because you didn't ask. So the one thing we want to do, if you were to look at this whole process and say, what's the one thing I could do for what's most important if I really want to accomplish anything, it's to build relationships. All right, just real quick review on language. The fact we never have a visitor or a purchaser, we only have guests, even those who come to display something, the petting zoo people, the dog trainer, they're guests as well as being participants, if you will. And we don't greet, we host, and that's especially important on Sunday. We work to be assertive, and this is going to come up a couple times today in particular ways, but we're never aggressive, and that means we always ask, but we never insist. And just the language I use, previously church people are people who for some period in their life, church was important to them. So when they walk in on Sunday morning, they're not total strangers. They're not feeling like total strangers. Never church people were never involved in a church. So once they open the door, they're in totally unknown territory. And this, again, is going to come up a lot today. So I wanted to remind ourselves not to use jargon unless we explain it. And that's all. We're not throwing out our words, our language. We're just explaining it. We're just teaching. Sam says she homeschools. Well, that's what we need. We need the church school. So anyway, why don't people love us anymore? Why won't they talk to us? Well, many people have the reaction, and that all you have to do is open the building and people will come running in. That's the way it was in the 50s or early 60s, when people remember. And it's just not true anymore. It might have been good, but it's no longer true. And this is a slide my granddaughter put together. I'll pause here for a second, give you a chance to look it over. My granddaughter's a junior, well, a rising junior in high school. And I said to her one day, we were actually down at the beach. I gave her the lead line. Why would I connect with a church I believe is? And I threw out a couple words. I can't even remember if she used any of them. And I said, throw me together a graphic. She loves doing these kinds of graphics. I said, throw me together a graphic that is kind of reflects what you think your generation or even people in general think about church. I didn't expect this much pain. I can't find a word that I think is probably never appropriate. Certainly some churches are corrupt. Many churches are selfish. Stagnant was one I hadn't thought about, but God, it really hits home. But this is what we're up against, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. But this is what we're up against. And I pointed out this slide before. It's a great one to have conversations, maybe during a coffee hour or, even a vestry meeting or whatever. And over a period of time, say, how can I explain that our church is not anti-intellectual? Just picking one out of it. And then we use those answers to build our texts and our posts. So the question that my granddaughter came back with, and it was one I'd already put down, would you want to be part of that group of people? The good news is that's not a true picture of your church. That is not your church. But the bad news is your audience thinks it's a true picture of you. So what we have to do is we have to intrigue them. And I'm becoming more and more focused on that word. We must intrigue them enough to listen so we can tell them and show them who we really are. And then we can build a relationship with them so we really can have a good conversation. So with all that negativity, is there any potential to reach new people? Well, the answer is yes, but it takes effort. It takes effort for us to reach out, to tell them about us, and take the time to build a relationship. People are not going to drive down the street and say, hey, there's a church there. I think we'll go on Sunday. Maybe that happened once upon a time. I don't think so, but maybe it did. No longer. But it's not difficult. It's not expensive. It's not time consuming. It does take a bit of a thought change, a mind change. So we'll talk about that just a little bit. And by that, I mean a mind change within the church as well as outside. So very briefly, and you can use this, and I have a paper on it if anybody wants, as a numbers person who would like to get more detail. But about 90% of Americans believe in a higher power. In other words, about 10% of Americans, this has stayed fairly consistent, will say they're agnostic or atheistic. About 25 to 35% have a fulfilling spiritual home, which may or may not be a church. And then there's a large group of Americans who say they believe in a higher power. They may even say, I'll pray for you or something like that. But that's the extent of their spiritual lives. They're not going to work to deepen their spiritual lives. So what we end up with, and I showed you a couple charts other weeks, but about 1 in 3 Americans believe in God, have some interest in deepening their spiritual lives, and will talk to us if they know the conversation will be respectful. And that's a critical word. And, we use that in the vows we make before God, respect the dignity of all human beings, anytime we've been at a baptism. And this requires, though, that we build a relationship with them that encourages trust. We may respect them, but they've got to know we respect them. So despite all the negatives, about 1 in 3 people near you are willing to talk. They're not anxious. They're very cautious. They already have an overloaded calendar. So saying, come on Sunday is, yeah, right. I got 3 things already on Sunday morning. So they're ready to prioritize Sunday morning in the church. But if they're approached with love, they're willing to talk. Typically, less than 10% of first-time guests will be active in the church a year later. That's kind of the standard I use. Are they active a year later? Or are they just, who the heck was that? Maybe 1%, that's probably very optimistic, of first-time guests at something like a blessing of the animals will be active a year later. We're going to change that, but that's normal conditions because we let the guest feel like a ghost. And I've gone through these 3 stages with you many times. So just very quickly, the first stage is to intrigue them. That word I've used before, get them out of ignoring the church to paying a little bit of attention to the church. Then they might interact with us. Things like the blessing of the animals, maybe a Sunday morning, and then particularly for those who were previously churched. And then build a relationship with us, to relate to us. That could happen quickly, but usually it takes a long time. And that's one of the challenges we face is people get impatient. Church leaders in particular say, we've been at this a month, but I don't see any new people in the pews. Well, my answer would be, I'm not surprised. It takes time. So why is stage 3, the relate stage, so important? Well, the key is that the odds the guests will later connect with us are very small if we don't relate to them. So we have wasted our time intriguing them and getting to know with them and interacting with them if we don't build a relationship with them. Second of all, even without any special effort, even though if we don't do anything different, we will have at times some guests at Sunday services, special events, whatever. If we don't think about asking for contact information and building a relationship, those guests become ghosts drifting through our consciousness. And what I know is hard for a lot of people, again, is this mind change within the church itself. It is possible for somebody to attend a BOTA or a bazaar as their first interaction with us and then become active members if we make the effort. We can't count on them coming into the blessing of the animals and saying, oh, this is such a wonderful place. I've got to become a member. It's probably not going to happen, though your churches are all wonderful places. So I just wanted to get this, and you got the slides, and I'll resend them to you. But these are the links to the first 2 videos if you're interested, if you need to see them again. And I've sent you the PDFs, the slides themselves. If you need to see them again, just let me know. So how to build a relationship? Well, anybody that's done therapy knows a relationship is all about communication. And our communications with our guests needs to be frequent without being spam or seeming desperate. And the asterisks are ones where I disagree to some extent with more evangelical churches. For example, on this one, they would have you have 4 or 5 contacts with the guest in the first week. I think that's too much. If somebody else wants to give it a try, that's fine. That's great. That's why I tell you my opinion and what other people think. So you can do what works for you. It needs to be friendly, yet it has to be worthwhile. It can't just be superficial. Short newsletter is too much to start with. And again, that's a place I disagree with the evangelicals. It needs to be informative without being preachy. It needs to be about the church. They should grow to know more about the church ministries. They should grow to know you better. And if you think of the church as the congregation, as a person, and so to speak, they want to know the characteristics of that person. And only occasionally focused on Sunday service. Now, this is something I've changed in my own thinking a little bit, but they basically, most evangelicals talk about sending out on every Saturday, sending out something about the next day's service. I think that's too often. I think the people know you're having worship the next day. I'd much rather spend that time telling them something they don't know. And we'll talk about specifics in just a second. So some of the details. If you cannot connect them, you cannot communicate with them, which means you cannot build a relationship. Bottom line. And one of the interesting things is the more information you ask for, the fewer people will respond. That's one of the reasons I say to only ask for their first name and cell phone number. That's the keys. I actually asked for a couple other things I'll mention in a minute, but those are the keys. Once the relationship deepens, you might ask for the kids' names, ages, etc. If you ask for the kids' names and ages the first time you see somebody, that's borderline creepy, maybe not even borderline. Particularly if you've also asked for their physical address. Physical address is one of the things considered most intrusive by many people. Now, I do, if you've looked at my form, I ask for a zip code. That gives you some general geographic indicator, and I don't think anybody's going to get real upset by giving their home zip code. I do ask for email address. I think people expect that, so it doesn't feel intrusive, and it gives us that backup communication method. Under no circumstances ask for previous church. I mean, that can be insulting in several ways. And it just starts out as a very bad beginning to a relationship. Again, we're always assertive. Always assertive. We ask, but we're never aggressive. And I'll talk about one of the cases where we come across as aggressive. And this language I've talked about. Now, most churches have a guest book in the narthex, and previously church people expect it. But for seldom or never church persons, that can feel wrong. It's like asking for a review of a restaurant before you even sit down. Remember, they've just walked in the door. They haven't even seen your worship space, and you're asking them for their information. And it can feel real aggressive. I hadn't thought about this till somebody pointed this out to me. The host is standing over points out the guest book and stands there waiting for the guest to fill it out. There really isn't a real polite way to say, no, I'm not going to do that. But that may be what they think. So I think it's better to say something like, we would love to let you know about things happening around here. There's a guest book over there, but if you prefer, there are cards in the pew, whatever. That gives them the opportunity to decline and wait to see if they want to give us their information. Another thing about the church guest book, and I know this isn't specifically on the blessing of the animals, but I wanted to get it in. Please don't have a date unless you have a lot of guests every Sunday. If you can't figure out what Sunday they visited, that's your problem. But I've seen so many churches, including the one we attend now, that I can't get them to change it. But you look in the guest book, and the last guest who signed in was a month ago. Well, if you're a guest, that says, boy, not many people around here, are there? The cards that I showed you are basically the same for a service or a non-worship event, and I will show that again in a minute. Again, you'll see that the information asked is minimal. We tell them why, and we announce an incentive. Now, that you may or may not be able to pull off, but if you can. I offer 3 ways to submit the information. One is on the form. Another is a QR code, which goes directly to the request for the same information, not to the website homepage. Sam, this is something your daughter remind me to talk to her about, or she can ask me about, the fact that you need a lot of separate pages so you can QR code directly to them rather than make people search through the website to find what they're looking for. And then there's a third option, which is simply to text a number you give them and leave their name and zip code. This is similar. You've probably all seen it. Text, Subway has something, text buy one, get one to this number and you get a coupon, that kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing, although we're not sending anything back. But again, it's something people expect. They're used to, they've seen, so I think it can work. And by the way, on that, one of the things to look at is getting a free Google number that you just text to like that. That way you're not tying up the church number, which most churches still have landlines that can't take a text, or a lot of churches. And you don't want to tie up anybody's individual home. So you can do that, and it really works well. Google free phone number. All right, this is the form, and I've sent it to you before, and if anybody didn't get it, let me know, and I'd be happy to send it to you again. Basically, I set it up so you print 4 on a piece of paper, make it nice and simple and easy. Minimal information, as you can see. And down at the bottom, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more in just a second, you have the opt-out option. This is my favorite way to do them in the church. This is actually a large church in Greensboro, North Carolina. They just took some cup hooks and put them on the back of the pews. I think these are screw-in cup hooks, but you can also get the glue on. And they're there, and it's just they're in front of people, but they're not aggressive. And here I'm thinking particularly of times other than Sunday service. One of us was talking about having people come into a concert of some kind. How can they ask people to fill in the contact information without looking pushy or something in the middle of a concert? Well, this way they still have that option. And yeah, most of them will go to waste, probably 99%. But they are available anytime people are in church. They don't cost much. The biggest cost, in quotes, is somebody going around and making sure there's one hanging there each week. There's a great time for a worship leader to ask for contact information. And this ties into what we're going to talk about more specifically in the blessing of the animals in just a moment. There's a moment between the peace and the offertory where people are still milling around from the peace, but the offertory hadn't started. The offertory hadn't started. The guest has time before the offertory to complete the form, so that works well, or they can use the QR code or whatever. And the announcement takes about 30 to 40 seconds, and I'll play it for you in just a second. I would do it every week, even if you don't notice any guests, and for three reasons. One, I would forget. If I'm not doing it every week, I'm probably going to forget it. But more importantly, some people come multiple times before completing the form. And actually, in the video I'm about to show you, I made a mistake. I phrased it poorly. And it proclaims to the congregation that we want and we expect guests, which may generate some important conversations. The mistake I made in the video is I said new with us. I said first time with us. New with us is much better because, as I said, this may be their third time there. They still feel new. We want to phrase it with the offer first and then the ask. We want to give you something, not we want you to do something. If you have incentives, mention those and then follow up, whenever a week later with a note that tells them that money was given in their honor. People really are hesitant about this. So you need to stress that you won't spam, you won't share the information. If you're streaming, add a specific way those watching can submit their information. And I have a little piece on that in just a moment. So this is the video. Let's see. Hopefully it's Shirley. Let me know.
Special piece to everyone who is new to us with us today. We're glad you're here. We can give you some information about what's going on around here, and we would love to send it to you occasionally by text. We promise we won't spam you or we won't give your information away. And furthermore, a generous donor has offered to give $10 to the food pantry for every one of these forms we get in. So if you can, please complete this form. You'll find it on the pew in front of you, and put it in the basket or give it to me on your way out. Thank you. And a special piece to everyone.
Shirley, did you hear that? Good. All right. I've had trouble playing that in the past, and I figured out what I was doing wrong. Anyway, okay, kind of moving on to the BOTA. The same basic form can be used. It is really harder to get contact information at events like this. You've got to be more conscious of it. On Sunday, you have that opportunity to speak to people where you don't normally have it. We want to ask, but if several of the volunteers ask the same person, it gets a bit annoying. So a couple things. Have cards at the booths where you're telling your story. And I talked about this last week. If you didn't have that, I will send you, just let me know. I sent you the video link here. Train the volunteers that are going to be sitting at your booths to make sure to gently ask if people have filled out a form or want to. Always use cards, even though it's easier to lose the cards. But if you have 2 or 3 people, clipboards can hold up. It's easier to hand out 2 or 3 cards. And as I said, be careful because it's easy to lose the cards, and they're the most valuable things you own at that point. I like prize drawings. Actually, I like drawings better than prizes. In other words, if I do a game or something and somebody's a winner and somebody's a loser, somebody leaves losing. And, that's not likely to be a good feeling. There are times you can do it. but you can, for prize drawings, use the cards as the entry form with the opt-out option on the bottom, and I'll talk about why that's important. Get the parent's name. You know, you don't want to be texting to the 5-year-old. They can write their child's name underneath, and if they have more than one child, then hand in more than one form with the child's name underneath. But you need the parent's name to respond. Now, here's the announcement I mentioned. As the service is ending, maybe allow somebody to bless the last couple animals. Remember, anybody can pray. But if the officiant of the service, before it actually ends, you want to get it while people are still paying attention, begins with something like, thank you for all for coming. We would love to keep you informed. Please see somebody with the red hat for information. So you can spell that out. What I did in that video just a moment ago, you could do something very similar. And just FYI, totally off topic, I like ball caps to identify volunteers rather than t-shirts or aprons, because a ball cap can be seen in a crowd. A t-shirt is hidden by the crowd. A prayer booth. I've said this, I think, every one of the presentations, so just real quick. A prayer booth is always appropriate. And you can handle this 2 different ways. And if you have a Daughters of the King or Brothers of St. Andrew chapters, prayer is one of their foci, yeah, multiple focus. You can offer to pray with the guest right then, and then offer the opportunity to stay in touch. Or you can offer the option of writing their prayer request on the back of a contact card. Then you get all their information at once. If you offer their prayers during a service, even if just by name, we hereby lift up the prayers asked for by Sally, John, Peter, that kind of thing. Tell them that, because they just might come to your service to hear it mentioned. But key, always respond. If you have a prayer booth at the Blessing of the Animals, text them, thanking them for the honor of praying with them. And I've told you before, I think it's an honor, and that's how I phrase it. And if it's appropriate, send a follow-up a few days later. Hope your healing is continuing. I sent one out this morning to somebody, and I knew he had surgery last week. I said, how's it going? We continue to pray for you. And he was, you could hear his thankfulness in his reply to me. That's the way to build a relationship. Okay, I've said texting a number of times, but let me explain why. It basically, texts are read over 90% of the time, and there's lots and lots of research on this. Emails are open, not necessarily read, under 30% of the time. Most researchers would say for a church it's under 20% of the time. And texts are read partially because you don't have to do more than glance at your phone to see the start. And you will see I always start, or just about 90+% of the time I start with the first name. And if you glance at your phone and there's a text on it that says Ken, I'm going to read it. I'm at least going to read the next few words. And people tend, knowing it's so short, tend to read the whole thing. And the text character, the length limits force us to be concise and focus on one point. And that's actually a good thing. It gets frustrating at times, but I want to tell them about this and that. And I've got to pick one or the other. But it really does up the chances that people will look at what you do send them. Now, most sources recommend an opt-in, which means people have to directly sign up rather than letting their contact card add them to the list. The option is, of course, opt-out, which means you tell them they will receive texts unless they say they don't want them. And that's the option I recommend, because there are basically 3 groups of people. Those who are determined to not get information from us. They do not want to be on another list no matter what. I understand that. Believe me, I understand that. Then the second one is those who are very interested in getting information from us, and that's probably by far the smallest group. And then the largest group, the one in the middle, are those who are basically too lazy to decide. So they'll just not opt in because they just don't want to think about it. So if we use the opt-in, we only get the very smallest group. the reason a lot of places recommend that is if you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of responses, you want the ones that are most likely to respond well to you. So that in those circumstances, it makes sense. We're not going to get hundreds and hundreds. If we get a couple dozen, we're ecstatic. And on a Sunday, if we get one or two, we are very happy. So we can handle it better. The many times we've done this with many different churches, very few people later opted out. We gave them the option at the beginning on the card. Plus, if you're using a paid system, the law requires them to send something called a compliance text, which basically says, do you really want to get text from this nearby church? So they have another chance to opt out. Plus, all texts include the stop if you want to stop receiving note. 3 opportunities to opt out. Nobody's being forced. But you will get an occasional opt-out. It's a little like somebody moved out of town and you no longer see them on Sunday. You'll get an occasional opt-out, but not many. Initially, you may get several. Over time, you'll get an occasional one that says, I've heard enough from these people. That's okay. I recommend going back a year and text people you've not heard from in a long time. And again, I'm surprised the response has been pretty good. A couple churches deliberately went back pre-COVID, actually sat down, spent an evening going over their directory pre-COVID and said, well, these people left upset, so we're going to ignore them. But these people just kind of drifted away or just never showed back up, and start reconnecting with them. And my approach on that is if 80% of them opt out, that means I'm reconnected with 20% of the people on my list. And that's a pretty good response. That's a pretty important response. I do recommend using a service similar to an email service. I use simple texting partially because its customer service is so good. And I've got something to talk to you about at the end, a little freebie for you. A texting service allows you to send many texts while personalizing them with a first name. And that's, as I pointed out, I think really important. It allows you to create text for weeks in advance, then save them as a draft, and then you review them before actually sending them out. But you've done 90% of your work well in advance. It gives you information about any bad phone numbers or opt-outs and takes care of them without you having to worry about them. It will allow you to shorten web addresses and insert graphics. This is really important. When you only have 142 characters, you don't want to use up 20 characters on your church website address. But it'll shorten it to, I think it's 8, maybe 10, 8, 10, something like that. And it also allows you to insert memes or photos or whatever. One of the churches I work with, their ladies did baskets for newborns and to hand out at the local hospital. And they had a nice photo on their website of the ladies taking the baskets. So I just put that in as a text. I said something about we seek them. Anyway, I can't remember how I phrased it, but something about we do good things and inserted the graphics. We told people about the church. And there's lots of other special features that you probably won't use at first, but you might get into, which is like keywords and things like that. As I said, you're limited to about 140 characters, depending on the service. The typical cost is about $30 per month or $360 per year. Now, if that is a challenge, we might be able to consolidate accounts and save money. Just ask me. I know people on your vestry are going, oh my God, $360 a year. I've been there. I've been at a lot of vestry meetings. But ask your how much is the average pledge at your church? And you can probably pay for the texting service for 5 years or more if you get one new average pledge for 1 year. Now, I hate looking at it that way. It's an inappropriate way to look at it. That is not our goal. But like I said, I've been in a lot of vestry meetings with a lot of numbers people, budget people. And that's the kind of argument they'll at least grudgingly appreciate, even if they don't agree with. What I recommend is initially texting 3 groups. Anyone who is connected to the church recently in any way that you have information about. This may be a Sunday, it may be, it will be the blessing of the animals, and we'll talk about that more specifically in just a second. Probably go back about 6 months, and we'll reach out to even further back in a different way in a minute. Like I say, it doesn't matter what the connection is. You will still get some opt-outs, but at the moment, you're in regular communication with none of them. As of this moment, you're in regular communication with none of them. So if any stay in touch, that's a big plus. And I know the people who immediately send them the newsletter and that kind of thing, chances are that's more than they want to know. And unless you've actually seen them come back, they're probably not paying attention to it. Having worked on newsletters, I say that with great reluctance, but I think it's true. So we send them a text, something like, hi, that's where it fills in the first name. Thank you for being with us at St. Welcome. We hope you, depending on how you saw them, they found something meaningful, enjoyed yourself. Saying enjoyed yourself about a worship service is really not appropriate, but found something meaningful, certainly fine. We'll send you occasional text, but promise no spam or sharing of your information. Is there anything? A lot of times I'll just end it with blessings. Now, this is longer than your 142 characters. This will cost you twice as much, but you're only sending it out once to each person. So I personally think it's worth the extra effort and the extra cost. And in fact, the way most texting services are set up, it will not cost you any more, because what you get is a certain number of texts per month for that $30, and most small churches won't even come close to using those all up. So the double charge on one won't actually cost you anything. Second group, anyone who has connected to the church recently in any way that you have information, but it has been longer than 6 months. And the only difference here is we're going to use a slightly different opening text. This case, we're just moving. St. Welcome is moving forward. We now text, and we will send you occasional texts. Same idea, but we're admitting the fact that they were with us a year ago and we never got back in touch with them. So, it's just a way of being a little bit different, a little more honest on it. And finally, the longest list, this is the one I mentioned to you before, are those who were once connected to the church, but I like the phrase they've drifted away. They didn't storm out angry. They just started coming less often, and then we haven't seen them in a long time. Or COVID and never came back. And these are the ones I would say go as far back as you want. Include those who moved out of town. They may still feel a connection to what was the church. Again, if they opt out, they opt out. No big. The biggest thing that's hurt, the biggest way this has bothered you is you've had to take 2 minutes and type in, or not even 2 minutes, 1 minute, and type in their name and phone number. And if you end up with 300, you can do it in segments. Do 50 this month, 50 next month. It's been 4 years. A few months ain't going to matter. You will get some opt-outs, but as I said before, if any of them stay in communication, we're making a real move forward. And this would have that same text I showed you a minute ago about St. Welcome is moving forward. And again, might cost you more. After the initial text, whether it's for BOTA or wherever, the person should get a text quickly. They have honored you by sharing their information. Think of it as somebody's walked down the hall and said hello. You're going to respond. You're going to say hello back. This is a place that I disagree with somebody, and with the evangelicals. And this is, well, the next one I say it, a guest to worship. I would write the response immediately after the service so I don't forget it. Plus, I can personalize it a bit. I've spoken to the guest. However, I would schedule it to go out that evening, and that's one of the advantage of the testing service. You can schedule it. The evangelicals say they should get the text before they get home while they're still in their car. To me, that's aggressive, if not desperate. Of course, they're growing by hundreds every year, so who am I to disagree with them? And again, I know I'm tired after the service too, but if you got this basic, consistent message, all you have to do is add the first name, maybe something personal. You can get it out in a minute. And unfortunately, you're not likely to have 10 in a week. After BOTA, that's something different. Again, just basically the same kind of text that we've seen before. And again, it might cost extra, but unfortunately, you're not going to do that often. Same basic procedure. The only difference is you'll have a lot more people. And I would create the list on your texting software. But let me point out, if you already have some kind of software program you use to record your visitors, record your guest names, you can do it in an Excel or something like that and upload it directly to the texting software. You don't have to enter it twice. Since you're now responding within a day, at the most two, after BOTA or any kind of special event, you can be a little more direct. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, or something else appropriate. And then the same stuff about sending occasional text. Now, I'm a data nerd. I like to know what's going on. So I would create a new list for each event, and after sending the first text, then consolidate that list with the primary text. In other words, if you do a BOTA and then you do a Bazaar, initially they'd be on different lists. Once the first one has gone out, you can reconsolidate them into one list, just to save you some time. But that way, you know what kind of response you got from each activity. And frankly, this is a change for me. I used to try to, make everybody happy. Well, you're not going to make everybody happy. And I finally absorbed that teaching. If people are going to be upset because I sent them a thank you or offered to send them information, they're not interested anyway. I'm not going to get upset about it. They won't be happy. So I don't worry about the opt-outs. If I got a large number, I might ask if I'm doing things right. But once these texts have been sent out, you can combine them. Now, personally, I think once a week is regular communication without being spammed, with the exception of Holy Week, Christmas. If you're going to use text for other purposes, like the vestry, go ahead, but keep your new person's list and messages independent. After all, you might text the congregation about a work day, but if somebody just attended the BOTA last week and now you're asking them to come to the work day, that's not going to be a good impression. What not to text? Simply a repeat of your church calendar. Now, focusing on special events from time to time is fine. I'm going to show you a whole list of things. And simply talking about Sunday services. I mentioned this before. I think an occasional focus on Sunday is okay, particularly if something special like a youth Sunday or an important sermon topic. I'm going back and forth about how frequently that is, maybe every couple months. Allowing that Easter and Christmas are going to be included in that list. So 4 or 5 other times during the year, you might say something, and not just wear red, it's Pentecost. They don't know why they're wearing red on Pentecost, or there's a good chance they don't know. And, anyway, say something about how their life will be changed, how their life will be impacted, at least impacted. What to text? I like to kind of have a person in mind. I'm kind of visualizing that would be a new person in the office or neighborhood. And the goal is to tell the church's story. What will they learn about your church? Tell them, and this goes back to all that negative stuff way back at the beginning of this. What you want to do is replace those negative stereotypes in their minds. Try to link it to their life as much as possible. Try to use questions rather than statements. Questions pull in the reader. Rather than saying, we hear about Jesus walking on water, how does Jesus walking on water impact my life? Much more likely to pull people in to make them think about it. Make sure your major ministries are mentioned 3 to 4 times a year at the minimum. And the question I kept asking last week, what do you know about your church? What do they know about your church they did not know 2 months ago? Applies here. What have they learned about you? If you're doing something, particularly with a link, they have a link inside or outside the church. And Sam, this is why I was talking about having individual pages as much as possible. So if people want to know about the food pantry, they can immediately go to the food pantry page, not go to the general page, try to figure out it's under ministries and, that kind of thing. Get them where they want to go. And tell them about opportunities that deepen their spirit, but make it interesting. We make what we do so boring. I'm sorry, but a study of John's gospel doesn't necessarily intrigue me. And I love John's gospel. But how does John's gospel directly impact my life? A 5-week discussion. And discussion is always more interesting than study. Here's what I mean. The one on the left is more typical. We're having Bible study Sunday at 9:30 a.m. The one on the right is not typical. 5 weirdest things Jesus said in John's gospel. Which one is more likely to pull people in? I think that's fairly obvious. There are some people going to be upset at the one on the right. That's all right. Let them be. What the text continued. Educational text occasionally, and I'll give you a list of some possibilities, but there's texts out, there's videos out there like what is the Episcopal Church and what is prayer. Periodically sit down and look at that list of inaccurate criticisms or stereotypes and say, okay, what can I text to offset that? Don't be afraid to have fun. And it could be a fun event coming up, such as an ice cream social. And anytime you do that, invite, don't just announce it. Invite them, make them know they will be missed if they're not there. And there's some great jokes. Google, and it's better on Google than other search engines, Episcopal memes funny. There's a couple hundred of them. But watch out for inside jokes. And there's several kidding about what bishops wear. And if you've never seen a bishop, that doesn't make any sense. And these memes can be a great way to get a point across, or just having fun can be great. Mary stumped Father Bob last week. He loves when that happens. Asking questions is okay. Again, my personal opinion, I think once or twice a year, I think it's appropriate to ask for donations, but that means you must have a good online system with a single link that goes where it needs to go. I was working with a church this past week and they wanted to post this. Well, I wanted to test their site. And after about the 4th page, I couldn't figure out how to make a donation. Well, I can guarantee most people would have given up after the 2nd page. So we didn't ask for a donation. They're going back reworking their system. And just because you're using an outside donation system doesn't mean their system is good. Have somebody test it. And occasionally ask a question. Don't necessarily expect you'll get a whole lot of responses, but again, the question pulls people in, makes them think about you, making them think about what's going on. You can occasionally remind them about the online service option, and of course, encourage them to bring friends to something like the BOTA. Every 3 or 4 months, offer them the opportunity to sign up for the newsletter if they're not getting it automatically. If you have activities for young people, mention them as often as you can find a reason to. And include a link in your website's page on safety precautions you take. You don't have such a page on your website? Remember, fear that children are not safe is probably the biggest reason your parents aren't coming. If you want families to come to the church, tell them their children will be safe. And the best way to do that is by having a page on your website that they can jump to and be told what safety precautions are taken. It doesn't have to be a lot of detail. It can be very basic. You can also, particularly against small churches, you might just want to point out diocesan activities that they're allowed to join into. Link to Facebook events or the landing pages in your text so they can get the information quickly. It's helpful to set up a multi-month schedule. Just go out 3-4 months, fill in the obvious dates, and then you can start looking at topics for the other ones. The goal is to intrigue and interest people, by telling your story. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. These are samples of text that actually went out, and I tried to tell you kind of characterize them in the first couple lines, but you have the PDF so you can see it. But there's a variety of text topics here, and I grabbed these off of a couple churches in about 5 minutes. So there's lots and lots of different possibilities. I've told you about the first name there, but let me see. I had one here. Oh, here's one where they shortened the website address so you can get more information. So that's how it looks to you when you send something out like that. Okay, what happens if they don't text? Well, use whatever you got. And that's one of the reasons I asked for email. Email is not as helpful, but it's better than nothing. And if they only have a landline, call them. You'll probably end up leaving a personal message rather than them answering, but go ahead and leave it. Maybe call a couple times, maybe ask a question like, would you like to have lunch or something like that. Anytime a child attends for the first time, and especially if they're in nursery or Sunday school, send the child a United States Postal Service note. Now, that doesn't mean you have to ask parents for the address, and if they're at all cautious, just back off, but explain why you want it. And you know, you're probably not going to have dozens. So if you find some nice cards that play music, the parents will hate you, but the kids will love it. And there's a good chance they'll be coming back. But a simple postcard, kids getting something is still amazing to them. Probably very few responses for all of this. Remember, as you're thinking about why you want to do this, remember that big companies, the insurance companies, for example, pay big dollars, put their names in front of us in multiple ways. They pay $1 million to name a football stadium. They know there's not going to be an immediate response. They're trying to build positive impressions. We have the big problem of negative stereotypes and the big problem of church leaders who get impatient. You will see results if you keep at it. This is how your guest really does feel as a ghost, particularly your online guest. So I'm just going to talk about this real quick. Most churches at best include a welcome to worship at St. Welcome Church in their notes when we're online. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Or, the officiant might say hi to everybody who's online. That's great. That's better than nothing. But that's not two-way conversation. So what we want them to do is learn about your church and get their contact information so they can build a connection. Online feels very anonymous and safe, and we don't want to destroy that. So this is very much the assertive but never aggressive thing. I know some churches have an online host. That's great. They greet each person as they sign in. I think that's wonderful. It's analogous to somebody walking in the door and somebody smiling at them saying hello. I strongly recommend also putting text on the screen. Back when I showed you that video and text popped up, that's what I'm talking about. And I think we probably ought to be able to interact every few minutes. Now, just like everything else, when you start doing this, somebody won't like what you're now doing, or they won't like what you start doing. That's just real life. So very quickly, you could do these. Each would be an individual posting, a welcome, the service bulletins, something about prayers and how they can submit prayers, the piece when you ask them for their contact information. During offertory, I used to think not to do this. Now I'm much more willing to do it each week. Just a very gentle, if you can give. I mean, if they're in person, their basket gets stuck in their face. I mean, that's much more aggressive than putting a nice note on the screen. Something during communion to help them remember about it. Then during the recessional, a thank you. And again, please let us have your contact information, and then a blessing at the end. You could go a whole lot deeper and add specific information each week, like announcements, lectionary readings. But what I just did, you could do once and just use it over and over and over again. Never have to do it again. And yeah, it is easy. It is free. The OBS system, Open Broadcast System, I think, is a free system in which you create a panel like I showed you on the video I showed. Then at the appropriate time, you just hit on, and a minute later off, and you have done all the work you need to do on Sunday. Very easy. And you can set them all up in person. At one time. It may take you an hour. And I have there examples of what you can do, and a tutorial that TriTank prepared specifically oriented towards small churches with little tech support. So made as easy as possible. And the person who put those together is more than happy to get online with somebody and talk them through any problems. And if I can help, of course, let me know. Finally, very quickly, what we've been talking about is what I call pre-evangelism. That's building the relationship that allows evangelism, which is the spiritual conversations, to happen. And there's some good resources for evangelism on our church webpage, episcopalchurch.org, under the ministries tab, where you can ask me, and I've got some ideas. I can show you some stuff. But for most churches, I believe the transition from pre-evangelism to evangelism would be a personal conversation with the new person or family and church leadership, which usually means the clergy, but there are churches, of course, without clergy. I think the best way is invite them lunch or dinner. Sometimes one member of the company, but when I could, it'd be both. And I offered to buy them coffee or lunch, and yeah, that costs money, and I insisted on a budget for this. Unfortunately, not enough people accepted that it became a big burden, but the mere offer. And I will tell you, I found most success by offering specific times, saying, would love to spend some time with you. I've got lunch available next Wednesday and Thursday to either work for you, rather than just saying, let me know what's good for you. That's easy enough for people to ignore. It's harder for them to ignore a couple specific times, and I'd always give them a couple. Okay. The conversation when you meet with them needs to be very gentle and welcoming. They agreed to meet, so they're expecting some church talk. I begin with general new friends type conversation. Where'd you grow up? What brought you to this area? If you're in North Carolina, I got to ask, what college basketball team do you root for? But leave enough time for churchy questions. And I think they're just broad and general. What are some of your big church questions? That allows them to go wherever you can. And if there's time before your time is up, what can I tell you about saying welcome? But we're still building it. That is lower priority. We're still trying to build the relationship. But try, without being pushy, to get into discussions of next steps in growing with the congregation. Bible study, talk more with us, whatever. You just got to play that by ear. It may be too early to raise those kind of things, but you also don't want to miss the opportunity. I think it's helpful to put on my calendar 4 to 5 weeks later to check back in. And if I do that, lifting them up in prayer until that time just kind of keeps them in my mind. So anyway, I want you to succeed. I want you to meet new people and have them join you in ministry. And I know that follow-up is key to that. So for 6 months, I will pay the cost of texting for 3 churches. You just let me know if you're interested. For 6 months, I'll help you write and send those texts so it becomes just really routine. I will ask you to keep me informed about how things go. That's the price you will pay. Just as I say, let me know if you're interested. And most importantly, let's remember to pray. And as I've told you each week, we're not praying that they be changed. We're praying that we be changed, that we be the minister God needs us to be. All right, I ran over a couple minutes. Apologize for that. But if you will, I'll stop. If you will unmute yourself, we can take this wherever conversation you want to take it. Pamela, I don't think I had time to say hello to you. Hi.
Morning. It's good to be here.
Good. Glad you're here. Questions, comments? What did I miss? I threw out too much. I know that. Well, and I guess I'm apologizing, but I guess I'm not. This connects so much into Sunday morning that I didn't want to miss that connection. And the big thing just about every church misses is the online. We ghost all of our online people. So I, also didn't want to totally miss that. I know Grayson Clayton tries to do a pretty good job using the chat form. I can't think of his name, that runs the video. And that's better than nothing, but it doesn't encourage, it doesn't encourage the two-way. It doesn't get us their contact information so we can continue that conversation other than those few minutes on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
My silence isn't no questions. And you did not give too much. It is so much, such a big tool chest to go to that I'm just, not overwhelmed in a bad sense, but in a really good sense. So I appreciate what you're doing for us here every week. I just love it.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of great ideas, a lot to think about. Implementation's a big deal,
Oh, yeah.
especially with a small congregation.
And absolutely right, Pamela. And that's why I keep saying, don't get overwhelmed. Do a couple things. Start with, like when I was talking about the list, if you have a long list to type in the first 20 names and work with them. And then type the next 20 in next week, or, whatever, to keep it from being overwhelmed. Have just a few extra people at the Blessing of the Animals this year. Next year, add a few more. This is about doing things differently, and doing things differently than we have been doing them takes a little adjustment.
I think your points about follow-up and building relationships are so important. It's not enough to make the contact to get them in the door. They have to be made to feel welcome.
Exactly.
And that we care about them.
Yeah. And in a way, it's a bit insulting if somebody comes in and we ignore them. 2 weeks later, they're thinking, I went to that church. I'll be honest with you. Every time I go to the church, I fill out the guest book or the contact form, and probably 80% of the time I never got a response. And they know me. And I'm a bit insulted.
Oh yeah, I attended a small church once when we were in search of a church, and no one greeted us.
Yes.
We didn't go back.
Invite, welcome, connect, which, if you don't know, has some good stuff. Has a wonderful phrase. They say most churches are groups of friends and not friendly churches. It's in the, I don't think I used it in this set of classes. I've got a great couple photos of Bible studies going on, and one of them has a round table with everybody, all the seats full and everybody looking in. And I'm saying, if you walk in the door to this, do you feel welcome? The other one has a round table, but they're there's a couple open seats and people are looking out. And I said, which one makes you feel more welcome? And we have a tendency of closing it. My vestry occasionally got very upset at me. Well, more than occasionally. But anyway, they knew that if I walked into coffee hour and if there was anybody standing by themselves, I don't care if they're a founding member or a first timer, anybody was standing by themselves, the nearest vestry member was going to get chewed out. And I would say, why is that person standing by themselves? Now, obviously, you got to have a little bit of sensitivity. Maybe they want to be by themselves, but you let them make that decision by going over and saying hello. Yeah, they would see me coming, and it was really funny because you could watch even the ex-vestry members all looking around to see if there was anybody standing by themselves. So eventually I got the point across.
I will give you feedback on something, a fruit of your recent labors with us. Our church is going to have a 50th celebration this Sunday, and it's a little church and struggling church and an aging church. And so somebody at one of the prep meetings we had right after church last Sunday, and somebody said, well, how are we, this is a week out, understand, how are we publicizing this? And our vicar said, well, we're going to put it on Facebook. And I just jumped in. I said, something I've learned is if you put it on Facebook, only 3 people are going to see it, maybe. I said, it doesn't do any good unless all of us share it and send it. And so this week I've observed about 4 or 5 of those where have gone out. Now, it may just all be going to ourselves. I don't know. But that's a spinoff from this. I wouldn't have thought of that had you not mentioned the importance of that. Makes total sense. So who knows? Yeah.
Well, and last week's I showed you an event, which you can do on Facebook. You could do a quick event. It literally doesn't take 10 minutes. And that Facebook shows that in a much broader audience. And that's a good way to do it. The other thing is, I'm just throwing out ideas. You'll get some people who really once upon a time were going there. Will show up, and some of those people won't be going anywhere right now. And so I would take that little video I showed, that text, and I would use that particularly on Sunday. Make some modifications for it to apply to the 50th, but to say, hey, you may not know how much we're moving forward, and would love to have you be part of what's happening. Not come back, but be part of what's happening. And here's how you do it. Here's how you fill out a form or whatever. I don't want to keep people from lunch, but so is there anything else?
How's Shirley's hip doing? Or knee, I mean.
Knee, she is doing really well. She's cheating a lot.
Right-ro.
Yeah. I have to get her on her because she's walking around without a cane.
It's the temptation.
Yeah, as she walks by without a cane. She can't wait to get back to driving, but I've actually got the physical therapist to blackball that for a little while longer. But yeah, she's doing great. Thanks for asking.
I've got a question, Ken, because I'm not looking right at your contact form at the moment, the sample one that you sent us. Yours includes a prayer request too within the same form. I'm trying to remember because at the moment we have separate cards for that. But I went to a funeral service over the weekend, and the church I was in, their contact card and prayer card were one and the same. On the front side was the contact, on the back side was the prayer request. And they were smaller. They were almost like postcard size, maybe even. Yeah, they were like the size of a postcard, like a 3 or a 3x5 index card. So I just wondered what you thought about combining it all into one. versus, having them separate. Because right now ours are separate. And I guess I understand it from the standpoint of, if someone who's been here for a long time has the prayer request, they're only going to use that card. But I like the idea of having them, both together. And then you just have to make sure that the right people receive the right information from the card. Are there pros or cons to keeping them separate, or?
I would actually combine them. And for this reason, the longtime member who leaves the, prayer request, they're just going to write Ken Kroohs, and that's enough. But that kind of in-between person who may or may not be on the mailing list and may have come a few times but never signed, that gives you the possibility of getting contact information you hadn't gotten before.
Yeah.
And no, I don't care if it's a longtime member or, a founding member or first timer. I would always respond. I think if somebody's asked for prayers, the very least, they should get a quick, thank you for honoring us with your request. You're in my prayers.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Maybe we'll work on getting those cards replaced so that they're one and the same. They're in the pew holders, and we have them in our entryway, so they're both always available to anyone.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about her saying they're in our entryway? We had a cleanup day leading up to the celebration, and last week I was in our entry, and we had pledge cards in the entry. That's what I thought you would say, but I just want to double check that those should not be in the entry. Should they?
I had a church. Whenever I'm dealing with a church, I've looked at all your websites and Facebook pages and stuff like that, and I had one. It happened to be in September, October, or something like that. But anyway, I went to their website, and big, filling the whole screen. Fill out your pledge card. And that just showed that their website was oriented to their own people. They didn't care if somebody outside, well, they probably did care. They just didn't think about what impression they were given. That somebody outside, a non-member, the first thing they're seeing is being asked for money. That's exactly one of the things people think of us. That's all we're focused on is getting their money. So no, I'll tell you something. I don't even like that during pledge campaign. I'm perfectly okay with having an usher there that somebody knows and they know they can ask for a card, but to have them on the table or something, I always take the attitude I try to have is a brand new family is going to walk in this church today. Am I ready for them? And if they walk in and, the first thing, they're handed a pledge card in the bulletin. I've seen that done. Oh, and even somebody who's been coming for a while.
Yeah.
They may have come 4, 5, 6 times, so they're not ready to pledge. They may not even know what a pledge is.
Right.
That's, having grown up in the church, I really have to work to be reminded of what people don't know. The word pledge means something to me. It doesn't mean that to a lot of people. And tithe? Well, of course, in the more Baptist they tend to use the word tithe as we would a pledge, and not necessarily. They'll talk about it being 10%, but the word is used in a different manner. Anyway, I'm getting on my soapbox. I have a bunch of soapboxes.
No, it's interesting because I personally know of a family who joined years ago. I was friends through Little League baseball with them, and they called and wanted to start attending from the Catholic Church, and their they don't do that. In that they don't pledge. It's just, you put into that plate sometimes twice a week. Sometimes there's one plate for a regular collection and one plate for something special. And my understanding is the priest doesn't get paid if they don't pull enough money, but yeah, so pledging was totally foreign to that family. And, I was able to walk them through it, and they're still, they joined our church officially, were received in by our bishop. But yeah, that coming from the Catholic faith, that was totally foreign to them, just not something that they do. It's the Sunday plate that's relied upon and in that tradition.
And the other thing in the Roman Catholic Church, if they're coming up short, they pass the plate a second time.
Yikes.
Yeah, and some evangelicals will use what they call it a faith-based budget. They'll develop the budget. They'll say, how much do we need to raise? And that means we need from you so much. And, but that's the end of it. You're right. They don't actually pledge out on it. However, they're also fond of reminding you often if they're falling behind. My background's engineering. I like to have everything kind of set up. So I understand the disagreement about pledging, but I kind of like it as a church leader. Particularly since
Vestry uses it, for budgeting. I mean, that's kind of my limited understanding. Is it helps them prepare the budget for the next year. So
yeah, and it gets particularly bad since December's the highest income, in just about every church. So you're going through 11 months hoping December will come through.
Yeah.
Oh, Shirley came in to tell us that she's using her walking stick.
Because I was looking.
Because she had already dropped it somewhere. She couldn't remember. She walked around so much. What am I going to do with this woman? Anything else? I'm hoping I've actually got I got plenty of time, but I've got a lunch meeting with somebody who's looking to put together the communion video I've talked about. So I'm hoping within a couple of weeks to have, well, that's probably optimistic, within a reasonable period of time to have something I can show you that I've got a couple, if anybody's interested in running with it right away. But I've come up with what I think are some better ideas on how to do it. So I might have one I can demonstrate to you. Because as Adrian was saying about the people from the Roman Catholic, and the one reason I'm pushing that real hard right now is we're likely to see more than a few Methodists looking around. Their church voted one way or the other, and they no longer comfortable in that church. But the Methodist understanding of communion and the way it's done, well, varies from church to church, but for most churches is different than ours. So it'd be nice to give them a 2 to 2.5 minute video that helps them be more comfortable and know whether or not they want to come.
I thought of one other thing, but if I can just comment on that, we have a new priest who started July 1st, and she's actually planning on, she was a deacon and then a vocational deacon, and she's just been ordained, and she's planning on doing a 6 to 7 week adult forum on the instructed Eucharist. Mm-hmm. So, and we had done that many years ago under a different priest. So, now granted, it's not going to be a video. The hope is that people will come to in-person adult forum, but I know she wants to do that. But the reason I put my hand up was, do you all still send out quarterly or twice a year statements versus just a year-end statement? We've kind of gone to just doing it twice a year because it's just time consuming to prepare mailing, as most everybody knows, with limited volunteers and staff. But if you still do like a an offering, statement, donation, giving statement, more than just the year-end one? Do you include a letter, potentially just updating people on how things are, what we're doing? Thank you for your previous donation. I mean, are people still doing things like that? I'm just curious. We did one for the mid-year, so I won't do another one again until we do our year-end statements, but.
Well, I'll give you my own thought on it, and then others can jump in, which is, again, as a numbers person, I like getting my quarterly ones, but I understand, having also been in small churches and having to spend the time, even as priest, helping put them together, I understand the desire not to do them all the time. If I were going to only do 2, I would probably do the September one, the end of September. Get it closer to when they've got to finish off for the year. That's just my thinking. I know it's kind of a out of the box way of looking at it. And I do like the letter.
Yeah.
Again, I think that it goes from simply notifying to communicating. And it doesn't have to say, and you're falling behind, which is what's hurting us, or anything like that. But the other thing I'd point out, we didn't do it every year. We did maybe every 3rd year in around tax time, when people are thinking about their money and stuff. We would do a second pledge campaign, and we would simply say, I can't remember exactly how to phrase it, but basically, if you can increase your pledge by $10 a week, that'd be very helpful. Some phrase like that to encourage people to look at it again. And I never got any negative out of it, and we did get some. We always got a little more. And the nice thing about that is, somebody increases their pledge by $10 a week this year, that's a higher base for them to look at next year.
Yeah.
So
it also falls during like Lent or Easter, which are the person in the office doing Lent. But yeah, but every 3rd year, that's, something to shoot for, Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on our question? Adrian, I think we sent out the request for donation from your church last week.
I'd have to look back on my texts, but yes, I believe you did.
Okay.
Because I'm on the text stream. It in fact, Fridays. Yes, yes, you did. And in fact, I usually, when I get your text, I always click on the links if there is one, to make sure it's taken to the right page. Good.
Yeah. Good. Let me know over time if you get any response to that. I have no idea what to expect.
Okay, sure. No, for sure. We'll let you know. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All righty. Well, if people want to go on to lunch, we can do that. Sam, is your daughter there?
She is. Hang on.
Is this a good time to talk with her?
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. The rest of you can stick around for this conversation or have a great day. I think we just got into what I think is the central question in doing a website for a church, and that's, who's it intended for? Most church websites don't have a clear focus, whether or not it's really intended internally or externally. It's kind of tries to be all things to all people. Whereas I would rather have particularly the opening pages focused on non-members and let the members go inside to find out what they need. If there's a calendar that they want to look at, let them go right to the calendar. That makes any sense.
Yeah. I definitely think that with something like a church calendar church website, when you have something that you're trying to bring people into the church, if you are able to captivate the attention of people who aren't inherently Christian, that's the golden ticket, essentially, because if you can get their attention, anybody who would already be interested who is Christian, probably, go on board with that too. So I think that's where my focus is more going, is how do I make this something that is inclusive to all people, even if you aren't Christian, and how do I grab their attention and say, oh, just because we're a Christian church, that doesn't mean that you aren't welcome, and how do I bring that forward as a, I guess, for the head page, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that's hard. That's one of the hardest things to get across, and I talked about that a little earlier, is we welcome questions and doubts. You can say that, and it doesn't hurt to say it, but to try to demonstrate it is really difficult. Now, one thing on that is, the old thing about use active verbs, not passive verbs, and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things most churches do, and I would say in excess of 80%, show what I would call passive photos. A photo of the church with no people there that is screaming, there are no people at this church. Or the one that drives me crazy is there'll be a picture of and I can't remember St. Thomas's, so I hope I'm not insulting somebody. But we'll have a picture of the church with the big red doors slammed shut. Yeah, that's not welcoming. Now the one in Mount Airy had that, and I finally worked with them we had to evolve a little bit. But now they have a picture of the doors, because the inside is beautiful. And you look down the aisle to stained glass windows, and when the light is right, is just gorgeous. So what we did is we had it there, and we had people not standing in the way, but so you can still see the stained glass, but kind of walking toward the building. So, and then I think we even had one person inside they could just kind of get a shadow of. But the point was, you're welcome. Let's see. Julie's still here? No. The best cover photo I know of is Grace in Clayton, North Carolina, Grace Episcopal in Clayton, North Carolina. And the young man, they got a boy there opening the door with a smile on his face, and there's people standing inside. The boy is now, I think, graduated college. But it's still the best photo I think I've ever seen in that kind of circumstance, because it says you're welcome. It says we have young people here. It just feels very come on in. Whereas, like I say, so many others feel like, no, we really don't want you.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that. I'll definitely check that out and see. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe you could send him your mock-up when it's ready to.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Oh yeah.
Love to.
Can be great on.
Are you using a single page format or a multi-page format?
That's for the mock-up single page format.
Okay.
And just to see I guess how far we can go with the program that's already set up for the website. Just so I don't mess around too much mess up anybody's coding. So
you can, and you know better than me, but I just know it's possible. You can use a QR code to direct people to the middle of a one-page site. So, like, for example, in the Blessing of the Animals, they don't have to, or the contact form, they don't have to go all the way through the entire page to find it. You can direct them to just that section. That's when I talked about using the QR code. That was what I meant, is don't just send them to the main page, the cover page, and then have them have to roll through to try to find what they're looking for. Because, particularly if you're asking them to do something like donate, or leave their contact information, we'll lose people in a hurry if we don't get them there where we want them to be pretty quick.
Right. Yeah.
But that can be done either way.
Hmm.
I can't remember how, but I know it can be.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I don't know. There's a YouTube video on it, I'm sure, somewhere. So
Well, I know there's an HTML code that you can insert and give a paragraph, essentially a page name. But that shows you how old I am. I'm back to using, original coding rather than Squarespace or something like that. So I'm sure they can do it too.
Oh yeah, no, there's you can do it 10 million different ways. There's no wrong or right. So, which is the beauty, I guess, of it, because unlimited creativity with that, right? So, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions any issues you have that you want to bounce by, or?
Probably will, definitely. But as of right now, there's nothing that comes to mind off the top of my head. So
okay. Well, she has my contact information anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime. And if you are making changes and you need examples of how not to do it, to show people, like I say, I lost the file on that, but I'm sure I can find a lot of them in a hurry.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That would be super helpful.
Yeah, there's more good examples of how not to do it than how to do it. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, hopefully steer clear of that then. But other than that.
All righty. Well, if nobody has anything else, why don't I will say blessings on your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.